Today we'll be taking a look at some of the sneaky tricks that the Night Lords can play, and what you should be aware of if you do see a Night Lords detachment on the other side of the tabletop. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, the strategy focused 40k channel where we're all about getting the most out of our miniatures on the tabletop. Now in the standard Chaos Space Marine Codex, Night Lords weren't generally considered the strongest of picks. In all honesty, their chapter tactic, Terror Tactics, is just a little bit situational, though it can be pretty effective in the right circumstances. They just didn't really compete with some of the other legions that you might want to play. As per the new Faith and Fury book, they've got a whole host of new stratagems, relics and warlord traits, and in particular some of their stratagems are very potent indeed, and absolutely have their place in competitive army lists. Today we'll just be taking a quick look through their various tricks from this book, and hopefully the discussion will help anyone who plays Night Lords or Chaos Space Marines, and also other armies, so they'll know what to expect when seeing Night Lords on the table. So without further ado, let's get into it. So first up we have their Legion trait, which is Terror Tactics. This is a reasonably powerful way to influence morale on the enemy army, but as we all know, morale only applies to certain armies. Things like vehicles generally aren't too affected. Many armies have fearless or pseudo-fearless sort of rules such as Tyranids, or just have very low model units such as Space Marines with high morale, so they're very rarely affected. So leadership shenanigans just aren't going to come into effect every single game. Having said that, Terror Tactics can let you get quite significant penalties to morale, but it does mean being right in the face of the enemy army. It basically gives you -1 leadership for every Night Lords unit with this Legion trait within 6 inches of the unit, and you can stack it up to -3 leadership. Say if you had a couple of squads of Raptors and a Chaos Lord within 6 inches of a certain unit, you'd be very likely to cause some more morale casualties if you did inflict some chip damage on said units. Now this could honestly cause some chaos if you're in a low leadership battle line such as Tau or Imperial Guard, and you can get your Night Lords units within 6 inches of many of their units. In general though, it's nowhere near as universally useful as the -1 to hit that Alpha Legion have, for example. So it's really the other options that are going to actually draw people to playing the Night Lords. Unfortunately, it's also not really the Warlord traits that I think are going to draw people to play them. They're mainly minor buffs and defense in melee. Probably my favourite for those that are universally useful is Killing Fury, which is just add D3 to the attack characteristic of the Warlord in a turn when they made a charge move. This one could be pretty decent at building some sort of smash Chaos Lord. Maybe if you gave him a Thunderhammer or Power Fist or something. Their relics have a few interesting options. Firstly, they have Flayer, a relic power sword that gives +1 strength and 2 damage, but also every model slain counts as 2 casualties for the purposes of morale, really doubling down on their leadership manipulation abilities. If you had a Chaos Lord with this, charge a squad of Intercessors and kill 2 of them, those Intercessors would now be effectively leadership 3, between taking the equivalent of 4 casualties for morale, -1 again for the Lord's Terror Tactics, meaning that you are going to have a very real chance of inflicting morale casualties even on mighty Space Marines. I'm not sure it's necessarily better than some of the other relics that they have available, but this really could surprise an enemy unit with an abnormal amount of minus leadership, particularly when you're fighting small squads that are usually fairly immune to morale due to their low numbers. Another good one is the Stormbolt plate. This is the 2+ armor save one, and in addition the bearer always counts as being in cover, so really not a bad little durability increase for a Chaos Lord or something that's hurling himself into the heart of the enemy lines, which to be honest seems to be where the Night Lords seem to be happiest. It means that the Lord could still be saving on 2s even against AP -1, or 3s against AP -2, so a pretty decent durability increase all in all. Finally, we have another interesting one called the Vox Demonicus. Now this one's a really interesting little relic where if you get your Chaos Lord or whichever character has it within 6 inches of an enemy character, then all of their aura abilities become just 1 inch range while they're within this area of effect. And in addition, enemy reserves can't come in within 12 inches of the bearer, which is always nice to have, but that ability to turn off auras is really interesting. We'll talk about it a little bit more later with the Stratagem Vox Scream, which I think might be the strongest thing that the Night Lords have. But being able to mess around with enemy auras is really powerful. Some armies, particularly things like Space Marines, really rely on the overlapping synergy that auras provide. They're just not going to be fighting anywhere near as efficiently in close combat if they can't access their Chapter Master rerolls, and many other characters provide either offensive or defensive buffs, and if you can get this character into place, maybe with warp time or something, you could just put a stop to all of the enemy command structure in one go, provided you do have a little room to land a jump pack character nearby. Very scary indeed, and certainly one to look out for if you are playing against Night Lords. Let's get into the stratagems now, and as is often the case, these are the ones where I think it's easiest to make a mistake and not realise that your opponent has a sneaky trick. that you just wouldn't see coming unless you knew about it in advance. Firstly, for one command point, we have the stratagem in Midnight Clad. This is basically a -1 to hit penalty that Night Lord's infantry can access whenever they're targeted by a shooting attack. Certainly things like this could catch you by surprise, particularly if you were just about to overcharge a bunch of plasma into a unit, and then they apply the -1 to hit, so the plasma weapons just blow up that bit easier. It could be particularly potent when stacked with other things, such as the Dark Apostle's ability to provide another -1 to hit on the same unit, and perhaps other things like Nurgle's Miasma of Pestilence to get a unit up to -3 to hit. This could give you some proper Eldar Flyer shenanigans on Night Lord's infantry. So if the Chaos player does focus all of their buffs on one unit, it might just be very, very hard to remove that one key unit from the game, if it's something like a Possessed Bomb or a big unit of Terminators or Obliterators or something. Next up, it's We Have Come For You for one command point again. This is another one of those stratagems that prevents an enemy unit from falling back. The Night Lord's player has to be a non-vehicle, and it has to be used on an enemy unit that's a non-vehicle, non-Titanic model. But that's still got a pretty broad scope. You could tie up something in close combat, and even if it's got fly, provided it's not a vehicle or Titanic, you can be absolutely sure that it's not going to fall back to shoot you in the face. It instead has to remain locked in close combat, potentially with a very scary Night Lord's unit that's going to rip it to shreds in the next turn. The Black Templars have something similar to keep a unit in close combat, and it's honestly one of the most powerful abilities that they have. It makes it far more easy to justify some slightly more fragile assault troops, things like Raptors and Warp Talons and things, if you know that you can for sure guarantee that they're not going to be able to be shot next turn. And it really makes it important to have some very strong counter-assault elements in your army, so instead of being unable to damage them in the shooting phase, you can hopefully deal with them in close combat. Next we have From the Night from one command point. This is a pretty powerful little stratagem where you charge out of a terrain piece, and the unit that it has done gets +2 to charge and +1 to hit. I could see this potentially being useful on deep strike charges, things like Raptors or Warp Talons in a Host Raptorial for example, where Chaos already have a Warlord trait that allows their Warlord and nearby Raptor units to have +2 inches to their charge. This could give them a further +2 inches, so essentially they're making a 5-inch charge, and when they get there, they're going to be hitting on +1 to hit. Very scary indeed, particularly if they happen to be Warp Talons as well, who can really make a mess in close combat, particularly when they have some additional buffs. This could be worth it just for the +1 to hit alone, so getting +2 inches to charge is just an added bonus. Doubling down on charges from Deep Strike, we have the Raptor Strike stratagem for one command point. This one is basically very similar to the Blood Angels one, where you get a 3d6-inch charge once a jump pack unit has been set up on the tabletop. It's very nice that it only costs one command point rather than the Blood Angels 2, though I suppose the Blood Angels do generally have some more threatening melee units, and very little in the game hits harder. Again, for basically guaranteeing one charge out of Deep Strike, this is a very good stratagem indeed, and you can be pretty sure that unit of Night Lords is going to get into their target, particularly again if they're combined with a Host Raptorial, and they're getting a +2 inches to charge from their Warlord trait. Basically, if the Night Lords are deep striking, then they're pretty much going to make the charge between all the tricks that they can muster with their command points. Next we have Prey on the Weak, which is a nice simple damage boost one. Basically, if a unit is shooting or attacking in close combat against a unit with a lower highest leadership value than theirs, then you get +1 to hit for that unit's attacks in that phase. Nice and uncomplicated that one. If the Night Lords units need a bit of extra firepower or close combat boost, then for one command point they can have it against the right specific targets. Could be particularly nice on a big unit of Obliterators, who all have leadership 8. Next we have Hit and Run, which is a fairly common one. Basically just charging after they've fallen back, so if you have kept something tough in close combat with We Have Come For You, then your jump pack unit can jump out of close combat and engage basically whatever it wants for another command point. Very flexible, certainly means that your opponent can't for certain lock down any given Night Lord's unit. Just by targeting them with something heavy, they're always going to have the option to make another charge. And finally we have Vox Scream, where we very much save the best till last. This could arguably be the strongest stratagem that the Night Lords have, and it does cost 2 command points. Basically, you have any Night Lords unit, you pick one enemy unit within 18 inches of it, and for 2 command points you basically just turn all of its auras off for a turn. Now, of course, this is going to be slightly player dependent, and it's not going to be used in every single game, but some auras in the game are absolutely vital to the enemy army's functioning, and to be able to just switch them off for a turn for a couple of command points could absolutely devastate your opponent's game plans. Obvious choices could be things like the Chapter Master's aura ability to make all of the Space Marines' firepower and close combat better. That can go away for a crucial early game turn if you pay 2 CP and have a unit nearby. Things like the castle lists where you have Iron Hands with that Chief Apothecary that gives them a 5+ feel no pain. Again, you can take that away for a turn, meaning that they'll be much easier to kill for a turn. Things like Tau Commanders calling Kayun to give all of their units reroll hits nearby. Again, you can certainly put a stop to that, unless they have 2 commanders. All in all, the majority of armies do have powerful aura abilities of one sort or another, and the Night Lords player, provided they can get a unit in range, can just choose whether or not it's worth 2 command points to switch that aura off for a turn. This could even affect things like Rabute Gilliman himself, bereaving any Ultramarines units of his rerolls, movement and advance benefits, and leadership buffs for being nearby him. In competitive games, I'd say that this is one of the single biggest draw to actually playing Night Lords in the first place, or at least including a detachment of them alongside a allied chaos list. You could have things like Night Lords Helldrakes zooming in, will be pretty much guaranteed to get within of the unit that they want to affect in the first turn or two. I just use those Helldrakes to switch off the aura abilities as needed and make life considerably easier for the rest of the Chaos army. So in summary, Night Lords have strongest synergy with things like Raptors and Warp Talons deep striking and taking the fight to the heart of the foe, and with their Psychic Awakening boost they now have a bunch of stratagems and options that really take them to the next level when using these tactics. Very reliable charges from Deep Strike are amazing, not falling back from them in close combat is really powerful, and turning off enemy auras at will is an ability like few others in the game. Hopefully some of that has come in handy if you do happen to be facing Night Lords on the table. If there's anything that I've missed or misunderstood, please let me know down in the comments and I'll post a correction. And hopefully we'll be continuing to look at some of the other Chaos Legions over the coming weeks in a similar manner. In any case, thank you very much for listening to Auspex Tactics, and if you've enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe, as we have new 40k tactics content coming out pretty much every day. If you'd like to support the channel and you live in the UK, then I have an Element Games affiliate link down in the description of the video below. If you're planning on ordering in any Warhammer in the near future, then consider giving that link a click beforehand. Element gives a decent discount to customers within the UK, and if you place an order through them, then a little bit of money goes to Auspex Tactics without costing you any more whatsoever. So if you were thinking about buying in something from one of these discount retailers anyway, then this can be one extra way that you can help support the channel and keep the videos coming. In any case, thank you very much for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.